Hi everyone. If you've watched Frozen, and I would like to assume that most of you have, you probably remember the snow, Olaf, the Let It Go, and all of that. I've watched it more times than I would like to publicly admit as an adult, but somewhere in my age inappropriate obsession with Disney movies, my perspective shifted and I started watching them as a student of psychology. I started noticing how afraid Elsa was of her powers and of the possibility of hurting someone she loved. And when she realizes she can't control what's happening, she isolates herself and leaves. On the other hand, her sister Anna doesn't understand any of it either. She has no idea how to deal with magical ice powers, but to help her sister, she follows anyway. And that choice to follow, to remain present, and look for solutions is what slowly begins to change the story. For a long time, I didn't think much about why that mattered to me. And then I started seeing different versions of that story in my own life. A few years ago, I began noticing something uncomfortable: the mental health of the people around me. A friend who suddenly withdrew from conversations, someone who joked about being mentally unstable in a way that didn't quite feel like a joke, someone who could not get out of bed, not because they were lazy, but because everything felt heavy and pointless. And I remember feeling this strange mix of urgency and paralysis because I cared deeply, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't know whether to ask directly, to wait, to distract them, to give advice, or to pretend that I hadn't noticed. It unsettled me. I remember a story from around that same time. A man sat beside his 15-year-old daughter while she struggled through an anxiety attack. Her breathing was uneven, her hands were shaking. She kept saying she didn't know what was happening to her. The man loved her deeply. That was obvious. But love did not tell him what to do. He didn't have the words or a technique to help her. So he sat there, present but powerless. Later, when I began reading more about mental health, I realized that this feeling of helplessness was more common than we would like to admit. In India, lakhs of people silently struggle with anxiety, depression, and emotional distress every single day. And unlike physical health problems, where the first step is to simply visit a doctor, things are a little complicated for mental health. What does that mean? It means that in many parts of the country, there are only a handful of trained mental health professionals serving lakhs of people. It means long waiting lists, compromised quality of care, high costs in private settings, and an overburdened system and professionals. And even then, accessibility is not the only problem. Even when services exist, many people hesitate to use them. Families worry about what people will say or if a ghost has taken over their child who's always on the phone. Employers may not recognize mental health leaves. Schools often lack counselors. And for many people, any form of mental health care might feel expensive or intimidating. So, yes, we talk about stigma, we talk about inaccessibility, we talk about systemic and cultural problems, and all of that is real. And if the problems are so many, what do we even do? Do we wait for the system to fix itself? Do we wait for more professionals to be trained? Do we wait for things to get worse for someone who's struggling? Because one thing I've realized is that mental health problems do not discriminate. They don't wait around to see if you have the resources to deal with what's about to be thrown your way. So, do we wait for the system to fix itself? Or do we look at something that already exists in every one of our lives? Most mental health journeys do not begin in clinics. They begin in conversations with a friend, a sibling, a parent, a partner. And in that moment, when someone says, I'm not okay, what matters most is support. Support that may not have the right words,
or the right clinical techniques, but support that has the willingness to stay and to explore the way out together. And that is the part we rarely talk about. We're constantly connected. We share updates, reels, photos, voice notes. I can tell you what my friend ate this afternoon, where they went last weekend, or who they're dating. And yet, I still might not know how they're really doing. It's strange when you think about it. We have more access to each other than any generation before us. But emotional access, the kind that requires sitting inside discomfort, still feels rare. And I include myself in this. Isn't it so much easier to send a meme than to ask, are you really okay? After a difficult day, we reach for our phones almost automatically because it works. It gives us relief, it gives us escape. For a few minutes, we don't have to confront whatever is happening inside us. But over time, this constant escape, it teaches us something. It teaches us how to avoid discomfort, our own and other people's too. So when someone expresses pain, we feel unprepared because real conversations require vulnerability, and vulnerability is unpredictable. You cannot control how you will be seen. And God forbid someone perceives me as anything other than my I have my life together aesthetic. This realization of what we were doing is uncomfortable for me because it made me ask myself a very difficult question. If someone I love was struggling, would they feel safe coming to me? And more importantly, would I know what to do? So, somewhere with these stories of helplessness, realization of the uncomfortable, and an act to do something, I also began learning. At first, it was informal conversations with people who were more experienced than me, psychologists, counselors, seniors. I asked them questions that felt embarrassingly basic. I still do. I attended workshops on peer support and suicide prevention. I read research, learning, and noticing patterns. And over time, that curiosity grew into something more sustained. 3 years ago, I started working actively in the mental health space in India, building peer led conversations and mental health initiatives with young people. In that work, I've now had the privilege of interacting with hundreds of individuals across workshops, discussions, and community spaces. Some came because they were struggling personally, others came because someone they loved was struggling. And through these discussions, I also realized something very profound. The support that I talked about, it exists. People sit with loved ones in times of need, and that always makes a world of difference. It is something that has simply always been our reality, something that a lot of us have grown up with without even realizing it. Let me tell you a personal story, one that some of you might find familiar. A year ago, I lost someone I loved. In my 19 years, I had never truly known what grief looked like. I had not understood what it meant for absence to become a physical presence in a room. It was a pain like no other. But when I saw it, I also realized something else. That in India, when loss enters a home, people do not leave you alone with it. The house fills with relatives and neighbors. Meals are cooked and shared, stories are told and retold. Sometimes people cry openly, sometimes they laugh in the middle of remembering something beautiful. People are not offering solutions, they are simply there. And I cannot imagine what it would have been like dealing with this loss alone. It made me realize that in collectivistic cultures like ours, emotional life was never meant to be individual. It was meant to be shared. Community is an emotional safety net. We have just forgotten that it can exist beyond rituals. We have stopped applying it to the everyday spaces that really need it. We do not need more saviors. We just need to remember how to sit with each other again. Support is not a small thing. It is not just a comforting gesture. It shapes whether people survive their most difficult moments. Because when someone feels supported, they stop hiding. It becomes easier for them to seek help. It becomes easier to imagine that things can change. And when more people learn how to support, something larger begins to change. Conversations become easier, stigma begins to weaken, people seek help earlier, not later. And we create a society that is more open, emotionally aware, and prepared to participate in its own care. Community mental health is not about replacing therapy, it is about rebuilding the spaces around it. And when more of us learn how to support, the landscape of mental health in this country does not change all at once, but it changes, one person at a time. So, what does this mean for us? Not as policymakers or therapists, but as ordinary people sitting in this room. It means we start small, not by following a single strategy because there isn't any. Support is deeply human and therefore deeply subjective. It will look different for different people and situations. But there are ways to take the first step. And for that, we need to stop running away from the discomfort. Supporting someone is not always wise words, cinema, and some great background music. You might need to sit in silence or watch someone cry about something you do not fully understand. And instead of fixing it, you stay. Because in the discomfort that you are so trying to avoid, there is connection. Second, we can learn. Even though support is personal, it is also profoundly scientific. Psychology has given us decades of research on what distress can look like, how to respond, how to refer someone to the right professional, or even how to assess the credibility of a professional. And in the age of content, you don't even need to read the research papers. Use your phones just for a better reason to learn and to truly connect. Sometimes we are one search away from understanding the person sitting next to us. We can start reading, listening, and questioning misinformation. The goal is not to become therapists for our friends. The goal is to become informed and responsible friends. And finally, build community intentionally. Community does not always mean a formal circle where you meet every Wednesday to discuss your emotions. Your neighborhood is a community, your college is a community, your work friends also can be a community. Community begins the moment you ask someone, "How are you really doing?" and genuinely wait for the answer. Because sometimes the first step toward changing mental health systems is much smaller than we imagine. It is choosing not to look away. In Frozen, Anna didn't understand what she was walking into. She followed anyway. In real life, it's quite similar. I want to return for a moment to the man I mentioned earlier, the one sitting beside his daughter, watching her struggle to breathe, not knowing how to help. For a long time, he believed that his helplessness was a failure. That if he truly loved her, he should have known what to do. He should have had the answers. He should have been able to fix it. But even then, his helplessness did not stop him from sitting beside his daughter. He stayed through the awkward silences, through the fear of saying something wrong. He stayed long enough to learn and to listen differently. And his daughter changed too, because she was no longer facing her struggles alone. Together, they sought professional support. The little girl began to heal, and her father learned to respond when the attacks came. And as she grew up, she began to do the same for others. She began to stay, listen, and learn that support is not something reserved for experts. It is something ordinary people practice, often without realizing it. And today, years later, she stands here, not as someone who has all the answers, but as someone whose life was changed by the simple, ordinary act of another human being choosing not to leave. Because that is the thing about support. It does not always look dramatic, it rarely feels heroic, and it is deeply uncomfortable. But it changes people. And when it spreads, it changes communities. And it often begins in moments so small you almost miss them. A phone call answered, a question asked, a technique learned, or someone sitting beside you saying nothing at all and staying anyway. Thank you.